Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome as everyone joins the Good Gut Live. We are live on Instagram, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Kick is new. We're so hip. But
I'm not. I don't know any of these things.
Dahlia knows nothing about
Nor do
what's
I
going
want to.
on the back end. Dahlia is taking care of her patients, which is amazing. But welcome once again to Good Gut Live. For those of you that don't know, I'm James Marin, integrative registered dietitian, environmental nutritionist.
I'm Dahlia Marin, integrative gut health dietitian. We're both the co-founders of Married to Health, which is an integrative practice of nutrition and registered dietitian. So if you're not familiar with the rest of our team, we invite you. Go to our website, marriedtohealth.com. You can learn about all of our other dietitians who specialize in many amazing things. You might see them in these coming weeks. But we're back again just 1 week later because you all requested that we come back with part 2 of the thyroid-gut connection. We had so much engagement, so many great questions last week, so many we couldn't answer because we were already over an hour.
Yeah, it got long.
It got long. So we wanted to come back and just keep talking thyroid and gut because it's evident. So many of you either are dealing with this, love someone who's dealing with this, know someone who's dealing with this, because you all were tagging whoever it was in the video to say, hey, you need to hear about this. So part 2.
And we're back with Good Gut Live. And the topic is so exciting. For those of you that don't know, you can watch us live, but if you don't catch us live, it's replayed on our podcast, Good Gut Live podcast, as well as anywhere you'll find us on the social channels. So thank you to those who listen. And many of you do listen to our 45 plus. It'll get sometimes I think our longest one was maybe 90 minutes. We haven't gone full on 2 hours yet. I feel like we will one day, but we try to hone ourselves in because these topics can get very dense, very deep. Hence the part 2 of this. I mean, your thyroid is part of your endocrine system. That is deep in and of itself, but then to throw in the gut microbiome is amazing. I find it amazing, interesting, fun, all of these things. And also we've been on the other end. So all that to say, watch part 1. Dahlia got into more of her health story. We've talked about it before, but it's nice in more of a narrow context of the thyroid and how Dahlia has Hashimoto's, what she's done. And really that's how it's a blessing because that experience has enabled you to better help her patients, our patients in general, and educate our team of dietitians, which is crazy. We now have 8 dietitians, including one on the back end. So it's really exciting. Actually, 2 on the back end. I'm on the back end, and another dietitian of ours. So it's fun, and we have an upcoming retreat for our dietitians. So we're really excited, and we thank you all for just trusting Married to Health with your care, with your support, and we're here to answer your questions. So for those of you watching live, put your questions down below. We're going to answer any questions you have on the thyroid gut connection. So on the title too, you're seeing AIP and paleo and IBS and Hashimoto's and all of these words that associate with this thyroid gut connection. So pop your questions down if you're watching live. We'll be answering those as well.
And just to kind of recap briefly what we talked about last week, we had a lot of questions of what's the best diet for the thyroid?
Yeah.
And we reviewed the latest data studies from 2022, 2023, 2024, and we're seeing that a couple things stood out. One, plants are helpful for the thyroid. There's not much valid data to support that goitrogenic foods should be avoided, right? You want to eat those cruciferous vegetables. You can eat soy. Really, the strongest data is for a Mediterranean diet, which we know is a pretty plant-based diet. And again, it doesn't mean you're vegan, right? You don't have to be 100% plant-based, but there's strong data for that plant-forward way of eating, 80+% plants in many different studies. So again, the most improvement was seen with a Mediterranean diet. And then we did also talk about there is strong data to support a gluten-free diet for reducing at least thyroid antibody levels. So if it's an autoimmune thyroid condition, you might consider eating more plants, being plant predominant or fully plant-based, and also going gluten-free. So we encouraged to try that at least 3 months and then see how you fared with those things. We also reviewed important labs to ask your care team for. I highly recommend if you're curious and you're like, ooh, what are the labs? We talked about a lot of them. Go back and watch last week's. But one that I said many, many times is have them check your antibodies. Make sure, is it just clinical hypothyroidism? Maybe you're nutrient deficient, or is it autoimmune thyroid? And then we talked about nutrients that are important for the thyroid, like vitamin D and selenium and zinc and magnesium and vitamin C. And we gave examples of some of those foods last week. And so we wanted to just continue kind of talking about other things because that's also a question I'm asked very frequently, especially because I'm a dietitian. What did you eat to heal your thyroid?
Mm.
And I just named a lot of the things that I ate and I supplemented with and I repleted in my body as they were depleted before. And I always, remind people I fully believe in heal with each meal, right? That is why we do what we do. That is the
Mhm.
motto, the Northern Star of Married to Health. And we also believe in heal with each meal. And so I think that's something that so many people don't talk about because we just want like the hard facts. What can I eat? What's tangible? What can I quickly implement and do? And we don't often talk about that heal with each meal aspect. But I know for my personal journey, for so many of my patients who have found healing, it's what else can you kind of mentally, emotionally, spiritually eat to really understand how to support your nervous system? There's so much data that shows certain mechanisms that have crossover between the thyroid. And we do know the thyroid is part of that hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal thyroid axis,
Mhm.
meaning they're all communicating with one another. And, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the adrenals, they are regulating and consuming neurotransmitters
Mhm.
and our nervous system and nutrients that support our nervous system and our hormones and our neurotransmitters. So we can't discount that fact. We can't overlook that. We can't say, I had an extremely traumatic childhood or I've had an extremely traumatic event transpire in my life. What can I eat to heal my thyroid? And that's going to be my tunnel vision and the only thing that I'm talking about and thinking about and focused on. So, it's so important to say, yes, I want to heal with each meal. How can I feel with each meal? What is going on with my nervous system every time I'm eating or every time I try to get into a more rest and digest, feed and breed, parasympathetic, relaxed state? Is my trauma coming up at that time?
Mhm.
And maybe you feel like, I don't know if it's full blown trauma, but there were hard things that happened in my life. And maybe I don't possess those strong coping skills to deal with it. And that's where, other things that you can implement along with the nutrition and the supplements and the labs is checking in on your mental health and your emotional health and your spiritual health to say, what am I doing to heal my nervous system, to support my nervous system, reduce my cortisol levels, reduce my, epinephrine and my adrenaline and these hormones and neurotransmitters that are just keeping me alert and hyper vigilant and in that very sympathetic state where I'm constantly wanting to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, or other things that, your sympathetic nervous system will want you to do. So that's something that we're seeing in the studies and is so important because we know there's a strong gut brain connection.
Yeah, and that's why. I mean, this really goes deep, guys. And so doing a part two, another and yeah, exactly. Another word for this is the gut brain connection, which maybe we're more familiar with than the gut thyroid connection, right? Or the gut thyroid axis, or there's so many different names, but it's really this connection that really speaks to the integrative nature of the gut. Hence why we are, and many wonderful health professionals are integrative because it just speaks to the connection of everything. And so you are really, the thyroid is a facilitator in the gut brain connection, in this beautiful communication between the brain and the gut, and all the signaling, like Dahlia mentioned, the neurotransmitters, the hormones that are being used to communicate. And it's all kind of interwoven and intermingling with these beautiful microbes that live in and on us. And what's interesting is over giving some presentations and just speaking on this so much, like I came up with another analogy. Maybe for those that have been
Mm.
listening, you've heard of our like ecosystem analogies and you've heard of our city analogies for the gut microbiome. But really, when it comes to these like neurotransmitters and kind of these postbiotics, we can say all the sciencey terms and be like, oh yeah, postbiotics and prebiotics and symbiotics and okay, great. But an analogy that we recently came up with, which is like these guys are creating this wonderful symphony, right? They're musicians in a way. So if you think of your microbes as these musicians, if you're thinking of the compounds in food as the instruments, the beautiful songs and music they can compose are these neurotransmitters, right? These byproducts. So your microbes are helping produce the serotonin, your microbes are helping produce norepinephrine and all these beautiful neurotransmitters that are necessary for our health in general, and especially to live optimally and thrive. And so you can think about, oh my gosh, how many like combinations of music are there? Like how many notes? And then if you get into all the different instruments and then we always say a cool analogy is like the fermented foods are like adding electrification to these instruments, right? Like it's like you had this great classical guitar and great, you could do a lot with that. But what if you plugged in an amp and added a pedal or added 10 pedals, and now you're doing all this cool like rock music and all of this really cool sound, and that can come from the addition of fermented foods, right? So we can even do cool things to foods. And this really even gets into herbals where there's Chinese medicine and there's many different herbal tinctures, there's concentrations, there's fresh, there's dried, and we can do all these things to these beautiful foods that we eat and consume and either concentrate them or dilute them and also play around with those beneficial effects. So this is, I think, a great way for you guys to really just think about what's going on is the plants you're consuming, your microbes are using them just like an amazing musician would use a variety of instruments you gave him or her, right? And so it makes Spotify look like a tiny little blip, like a speck of sand compared to what's going on in the gut, right? All the music and all the genres and all the instruments and all the singers pale in comparison to what your gut, the beautiful music they're making in terms of these neurotransmitters, hormones, postbiotics. So anyway, that
All
is
that to
that all
say,
that to say.
right? You
Part two.
I always say, you can put in the best of the best, right? The highest quality, most expensive supplements and organic food and really the highest quality of everything. And if your nervous system is off, you might not be garnering the benefits of all of that, right? You might not be gleaning all the benefits of all those different things. And so, really checking in with your nervous system and just seeing, am I trying to constantly eat or supplement in a highly stressed state? Because we do know when you are in that stress state, you need to pull energy from somewhere in order to make those stress hormones. Your body doesn't just fabricate energy out of nowhere. So, a lot of the times, your body is pulling from your hormones and your digestion. So, if you're constantly in a stress state and you're saying, okay, I'm eating this gluten free food, this very organic food, I'm eating a Mediterranean plant based diet. Um, if you're doing it in a very stressed state, you might want to check in with yourself and say, okay, how can I calm my nervous system before the meal? How can I, implement some type of meditation or prayer or practice that really helps to shift me from that triggered sympathetic state into a more calm parasympathetic. So that way, I'm not pumping out adrenaline, I'm not pumping out cortisol, I'm not pumping out these stress neurotransmitters. I'm able to calm my nervous system. I'm tapping into some of my serotonin and my dopamine that my gut bugs are making, and I'm absorbing things really well. Because when we're
Mhm.
stressed, we have less stomach acid, we have less bile. So we just have a lesser degree of nutrient absorption. So that's
Mhm.
always one thing I'm always asking my patients, how's your stress level? How's your relationship with food right now? What's that inner voice when it comes to food? Because that certainly matters
Totally.
because it can override all the other things.
We see your comments and questions coming in. What's up,
Mhm.
Dr. Eddie? All right. Well, do you want to continue, or should we get to some
I want
questions? We
to,
can
yeah,
answer some
answer some of these
questions.
questions along the way, and then we'll continue.
Like, what's the stream all about? We're talking about the thyroid gut connection, and there's so many woven topics into there, like AIP diets. So, for those that don't know, that's the autoimmune paleo diet, which is typically used for thyroid issues. So much there, but yeah. What are you thinking, Dahlia, when we're looking at some of these questions? Thank you for watching this. We hope you know by now Married to Health really does everything we do coming from a need in our community, a need from our patients, a need from being dietitians for over a decade, from running our own private practice. And we continued that when we formulated Gut Nurture. So if you didn't know, Dahlia Marin, RDN, LD, CGN, formulated Gut Nurture along with Complement. We truly believe it is a great complement for your gut health journey. Why is that? Well, it's low histamine, it's low FODMAP, it's organic, even the package is compostable. We really designed it with the patient in mind that is wanting to eat more plants, that needs to eat more plants, but is struggling to eat more plants. This is that bridge. We also designed it for the person who's just like, I want to boost my gut, I want to feel really good, I want to help with the structure, function, and population of the gut. This is unlike anything that's really out there in that, as it's focused on being a prebiotic, not really a probiotic. So the idea here, you can think of Gut Nurture as compost for your gut ecosystem. It's not trying to force seeds and the probiotics in, it's trying to create a beautiful environment and a beautiful foundation. So any seeds you get from the fermented foods you're eating, from your environment, from the beautiful habits you're building, whether you're working with us or not, they are going to fall on this beautiful, healthy soil with this beautiful, healthy compost and create a lush, beautiful ecosystem and garden, creating an abundance of fruit and postbiotics that are going to keep you healthy and thriving. So click down below, learn more about Gut Nurture, and we'll continue with the episode. Hi from Instagram. Okay, here's a good one. Just looking at the title, 3 of my 4 sisters, including myself, have PCOS, so that's polycystic ovarian syndrome, Hashimoto's, which is thyroid, autoimmune thyroid, and RA, which is rheumatoid arthritis. We struggle with joint health and weight loss. We also have gluten sensitivity. Wow. And so this really speaks to, so 3, and we find this very high in women. So that this makes total sense, and it is, I mean, you're sharing your genetics with your family. Obviously, you're sharing a microbiome if you're living together and with your family. So a lot of these issues will be like this comorbidity, right? They're happening at the same time. And so research shows about 10 to 25% of people with PCOS have subclinical hypothyroidism, or they're diagnosed, right? So
That could be up to a quarter of
that's
people with
so 1 in 4.
PCOS.
So it's very, very high. And then we know when you do have one autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's, you're more likely to get another. So that speaks to the rheumatoid arthritis, which is basically your immune system attacking your joints. And especially when we're talking about the gut, then that goes into inflammatory bowel disease and a whole host of issues there. So, a simple way to put this is you have a fire that's out of control, and fire's good. We've said this many times before. Inflammation is literally Latin for in flames or on fire. Inflammation is good, but when it's just like leaving your stove on for too long, it's just like letting an open fire in your home go on. It's like, well, what are you doing there? Wait a minute, that's too much fire, right? You need to kind of lower the flames or turn it off, give it a break, and your body can't, right? So that's when things get out of control. The chronic inflammation, the chronically being on fire is happening, and it's spreading. As you all know, with fire, it likes to spread. And so it's using cytokines and histamines and all these other little, you can call them kindling or signaling in this sense for your body to then spread this fire, and it'll do damage. And if left just like a fire for too long, it's like, wow, that just didn't burn my room. It's now spreading to the roof and to other rooms. And now half or all of your house is on fire. So that's where you're just getting a diagnosis after diagnosis. And now my doctor said I have this and that, and it's spreading like fire. So what you can do is go, okay, where did maybe this fire originate? Where is it maybe most prevalent? And let's start there to first put out and kind of calm down some of the flames, and then assess, okay, let's now block off so it doesn't spread any further, as well as then get to the root of where this all originated.
And,
Very
I
important.
think it's interesting that you bring up, right? You and your three of your four sisters have PCOS, or yeah, three of my four sisters, including myself, have PCOS, Hashimoto's, and RA.
Yeah.
Yes, you share genes, right? And we do know genetics contribute about 20% of the picture. So perhaps there is a small genetic component. And it's also asking, did we share an environment that affected our nervous systems the same?
Mm,
Did we share an environment that contained maybe environmental toxins like mold, or were we exposed to heavy metals or other toxins our body struggled to get rid of from an early age or as we were developing? Do we share dietary habits?
mm,
Do we share other lifestyle habits like our value for movement and exercise? Why is it that, outside of just sharing DNA, all of our bodies express these diseases in the exact same way? So it's also asking that, do we share that same relationship with food, with exercise, with our nervous systems? How are our detox capacities, and were we exposed to any type of toxins? So, really looking into some of those things can be helpful to really understand how can we heal together and really
mhm.
support each other, because how cool is that, as a family you could all support one another and really heal together. Because I know my sister was diagnosed with Hashimoto's after I
Mm.
was, and we were constantly sharing information with each other of, hey, I'm learning this, I'm going to try this, do you want to do this with me? And so it's nice to heal with one another and support one another in that as well, and really, point out to one another like, oh, hey, maybe this is something both of us could benefit from in this
Hey, you should
aspect of
do
our.
this right now.
But, it's interesting that families can have certain diseases that run,
Yeah.
together. And maybe you have a genetic component with your livers that are affecting detox, or maybe there is something going on with the adrenals or any of that hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And then again, you're in that, 10 to 25% of people who have PCOS and hypothyroidism. And then again, RA probably came after those two things, because
Mhm.
that's usually the progression. And, that leads into this next question very, very, effortlessly. Someone saying, I'm always being asked, have you tried things like the autoimmune solution
Mm.
or some variation of that? What are our thoughts on that? And so, for those who aren't familiar, the autoimmune solution is a protocol that was branded by, a popular functional medicine doctor. Her name is Amy Myers. And she's kind of just implementing pillars of functional medicine. She uses what's called the 4R protocol, which is very popular in functional medicine, where you're focusing on things like removing whatever triggers. If it's food,
Mhm.
if it's emotional, if it's environmental, you're really identifying it and then you're trying to remove it. Then you're trying to restore the structure of whatever, your gut, restore your immune system, really rebalance that system. You want to then repair, and once you've identified, you've removed the, let's say, the match, the thing that's starting the fire. You're really starting to rebalance, remove some of the kindle, and then you're starting to repair. And then you're continuing to find that restoration. So it's functional medicine, and then she also throws in there basically a paleo diet, because in what I'm seeing in kind of a summary of her program, it's recommended to remove gluten, dairy, grains, legumes, sugar, and processed food. And it's interesting because one of the comments that I read said, her book offers almost no studies to back what she's saying. She's kind of just saying, eat paleo, which would remove all of those different things. The only thing in addition that you're it is in autoimmune paleo is removing nuts. So it's basically a paleo diet because you're removing all the things that you would remove in paleo: the gluten, the dairy, the grains, the beans, the refined sugar, and processed foods. So again, we kind of spoke to some of the data with that. Like, there's some data to support removing gluten. Um, And then, there is a little bit of data out there regarding dairy. It's not as strong as the gluten data for Hashimoto's in particular or hypothyroidism in particular. But really, to say remove legumes and grains because they contain lectins, there's no strong data for that. In fact, there's data to support the exact opposite of that. They have done studies and they were crossover studies. So they took two groups of people, and in one of the groups, they had them eat the grains and eat the legumes. And in the second group, they had them not eat the grains and not eat the legumes, and they measured their inflammatory markers. In the group that was eating grains and eating legumes, their inflammatory markers reduced significantly. So it was statistically significant enough to report that. Then they did a crossover study. And so they had them switch diets. So they said, all right, if you were in that group eating legumes and grains, stop. We're going to have to take you off of them. We're going to do that for a couple months. Then we're going to remeasure your inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, homocysteine, sedimentation rate. And guess what? Their inflammatory markers rose once they stopped eating legumes and stopped eating grains. So again, if a book isn't providing data or a protocol isn't providing data and they say it's revolutionary, it's one of a kind, and they have no data to back it up, you do want to ask that, right? Because
Yeah.
there's even some SIBO protocols out there and it's like overly complicated, adding certain things, at different phases. And it's like, what's the data for this program and this
Mhm.
protocol? And I say that as someone who's created a protocol. Anyone can create a protocol, right? And say it's revolutionary, it's one of a kind.
Yeah.
If there's not data to back it up, it's stressing you out, it's destroying your relationship with food. And if anything, it's not really helpful, right? Because inflammation is going to drive autoimmune markers and more inflammation, it might not be worth trying. So, and I say this as someone who in the past, when AIP, autoimmune paleo, first came out, right? I was newer in my Hashimoto's journey. I tried it. I was like, you know what? There's not much data for this because
Mhm.
I looked. I was already a dietitian at that time, but I was willing to try it. And I can tell you, yes, reduced my weight. I lost like 5, maybe 10 pounds. It ruined my relationship with food. It made me feel left out when the rest of my family was eating grains and nuts and legumes, especially as someone
Just a
plant-based.
con till this day, Dahlia has trouble eating plantains because you ate so many
I'm
plantains.
traumatized from plantains. Like they disgust me because I had to eat
And I
plantains
love
instead of
plantains.
delicious grains. And you know what? Anecdotally, my autoimmune markers did not go down at all when I was following the autoimmune paleo protocol. Because again, there's not much solid data on it. And, really to me, I think what helps people the most, because we do have data on these things, is that people remove gluten, they remove refined sugar, and they remove processed foods.
Mhm.
We have seen, you know, there is strong data to show highly refined foods are going to elicit a little bit of that inflammatory response. That's not really a subjective thing. We can measure it. It's objective. We can measure, inflammatory markers when eating or when not eating certain things. So I think when people are removing highly refined foods from their diet, they're consuming more fiber. They're consuming more antioxidants. They're consuming more omega 3s. They're maybe having more vitamin D in their diet and zinc and these nutrients that we've identified are helpful for the thyroid. One we didn't talk about last time is potassium, right? We've seen both too much and not enough potassium can affect the thyroid's function. But I would say for the most part, people are low in potassium. So when you're not eating highly refined processed foods, which are very calorie dense, but not very nutrient dense, what are you eating instead? And so I think that's where protocols like this do help people feel better. And then, people say, oh, it was that protocol that really healed me. And it was that protocol that really helped me make a breakthrough. And I think it was just you resolve to eat less processed food. And that is going to help most of us.
That's where we find ourselves with, like, we do enjoy like some of these pillars and some of these really, I guess, core beliefs of functional medicine. Like we do find ourselves agreeing with them, but then it is important of how you implement them and how you sustain these pillars because yeah, it's important to repair and repopulate and, replenish, and all these things are great, but it's how you go about doing it. And if there, again, like Dahlia's saying, there's nothing to back up how you're doing it, it can lead people into bigger holes financially,
Mhm.
physically, mentally, and spiritually. That's what we're here about, true balance. And this is in our personal lives, and no one's perfect, but we're trying to find true balance of these physical, chemical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of our life. And if that program isn't helping you do that, it's
Mhm.
maybe not the right program for you, because it's not taking into account all these important factors, right? That's what it's really all about. It's much more like Dahlia was saying, it's feel with each meal, it's heal with each meal. And then there's way more, those are still the tip of the icebergs, but it is a journey. It's a lifelong journey. It's almost like you have to be married to health, and commit to health for the rest of your life. It's weird, but yeah, it's so important. So many things there. So
Mhm.
yeah, and then just to kind of close on this, again, there's lots of programs out there, there's lots of protocols out there. Read reviews, ask questions, reach out, just keep searching. And then when you feel really good, then execute on the program or the protocol, right? We totally get that. We know there's a lot out there, but again, we're not all about just being like, yeah, to completely eliminate grains, completely eliminate legumes. That right there is a red flag. Just
Mhm.
because I mean, just because of the data alone, if any practitioner is reading the data, wow, but these produce short chain fatty acids. These help our microbes, one, replicate properly, two, feed them, and three, by feeding them, you're producing these beautiful postbiotics. This is the music, right? This is the beautiful music that these microbes play in our body. The neurotransmitters, the hormones, short chain fatty acids, these protect our brain and our pancreas and our liver, really all organ systems in the body. So
Are
it's
there.
like you probably are already lacking in that. And now you're going to remove the foods that will help you with that. Think about that for a second, right? And just kind of slow down and, yeah, take a breath. And just a comment also, we say this a lot, but we have patients who come to us and go, I spent thousands and thousands of
Mhm.
dollars already, because
Mm.
another red flag of these programs is they make you pay up front, and or even half, but like it's half of like $8,000 or $5,000. And so that's still a lot. You're paying up front for the program. And then in the program, they're making you take like a bunch of supplements. And then at the end
And
of
take
it,
out a loan.
are you feeling better? Right. So
Mhm.
think about that. It's very, very important when you're spending multiple thousands of dollars. So,
'Cause it's hard to heal your body when now you're financially very stressed and, you're emotionally overwhelmed and it's causing other issues in your life. So, really going for things that are balanced. So, again, just, to review, healing autoimmunity always involves healing the gut because
yes.
it does not matter what foods you're putting in, what supplements, if you can't absorb them because your gut is in disarray and dysbiosis and it's fractured, it doesn't. It's not going to make the impact that you're hoping it will. So always focus on your gut when you're trying to heal any autoimmune disease, especially hypothyroidism with an autoimmune component. You also want to work on your nervous system and just
Mhm.
see, how can I feel with each meal? Is there work that I can do there to reconnect myself with my body, help myself with that HPAT, that hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, thyroid axis. And then what foods, what supplements, what's the best dietary pattern that's been shown in the data. And again, no matter what topic we are here talking about, replace gut thyroid with, kidney connection, brain connection, heart connection, toe connection. Like we're going to say the data is very clear. A Mediterranean, just plant predominant, 80+% plants, that's the way to go, no matter what, Carnivore Joe online tells you. So really continue to just heal with each meal. But if you have any other questions, we'll be here for another couple minutes. We are glad that you all requested this topic because it gave us that opportunity to really do a deep dive in the data and kind of see what is there and just really understand what you're asking, what you're wondering. And someone's asking, no meat? Question mark.
Yeah.
We said 80+% plants. So I can't sit here just because I'm plant-based. It does not mean that I can lie and say the data says a vegan diet is helpful. It says plant predominant. So 80+% plants. If you want to fill in the other 20% with, whatever protein you want to fill it in with,
Yep.
go for quality proteins. But, ethics aside, like the data does not support a vegan diet. It
Well,
supports a Mediterranean plant predominant diet. So.
right. And then to be clear, I mean, there's a lot of evidence and there's great organizations that say, yeah, if you a fully 100% plant-based diet can support your needs,
Properly balanced.
properly balanced. And so that's there. One of the best studied, well-researched diets is the Mediterranean diet. So even starting there, and how is it possible? I need my protein. Just remember, all protein comes from plants. And what I mean by that is we are not producing amino acids. Humans or animals, whether it's a cow, chicken, goat, pig, fish, we're not producing amino acids. We are really just transferring amino acids and reconnecting amino acids. The only living organism on the planet that makes amino acids are either microbes or plants, right? Not mammals. So really, when you're eating a mammal, you're eating a cow that has bioaccumulated amino acids through its food and is now making tissue proteins, and then you're eating that tissue protein, right? So you can get amazing amounts of protein. We get amazing amounts of protein from plants. But again, if you're new to this and if you're like, well, I still eat animal products, shoot for 20% and go from there. And then see how you're feeling, see what your needs are, see what your objectives are, and then kind of build on that. So yeah.
And this is
Now
a
we're getting
great
some more.
segue question. Hello, regarding plant-based meals, what are your type of meals? So meals that we're consuming
Ooh.
on our plant-based diet. And yeah, I would say because we go to the gym 5 to 7 days a week.
Well, let's list our profile. We're parents. We run a private practice with 8 dietitians. We go to the gym. We do work, like 5 days a week,
Okay.
right? So that's us. Okay. So what does that look like?
So, realistically, they're pretty simple, straightforward, but balanced meals.
Yeah.
I know for myself, I try to shoot for at least 25 grams of plant protein per meal. So every meal that I'm consuming has kind of a high ticket protein item in it, whether that's high protein tofu or tempeh, a legume pasta, a protein
Chickpea
powder.
frittata.
Beans aren't really the
Yeah, I know.
highest source of
But that's
protein.
one thing.
So that could be like, yeah, chickpea flour is a little bit more than chickpeas, but every meal is going to have one of those high protein things. If you don't tolerate soy, you could do pumfu, which is pumpkin seed tofu. So all of my meals are going to contain a protein. About half of the meal is going to come from fiber. So non-starchy fiber, salad greens, tomatoes, cucumbers. Usually it's seasonal, non-starchy fiber, and fruit. So about half of the meal is veggies and fruit, and then the other quarter of it is coming from some type of starch, and we'll vary that up as well. Potatoes. We usually will change up our grains or our grain like seeds like quinoa, buckwheat, millet, amaranth, rice, some type of pasta made from one of those things. I personally eat gluten-free, and because I do have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, so I go for gluten-free grains, but still gluten-free whole grains. So I'm getting the benefit of the fiber. So
thank you so much for watching this video. We know you're probably getting quite a bit from it. It can be a lot of information, can be overwhelming, and we totally get that. Dahlia was there not too long ago suffering with IBS and SIBO-like symptoms. She was hunched over very often, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, skin issues, hormonal issues, the list goes on and on. So we know this. We've been in practice now as registered dietitians for over a decade, and we created our Good Gut SIBO IBS program for you. If you're experiencing IBS, SIBO symptoms, IMO, SIFO, the list goes on and on. If you're like, I'm not really sure what this is, click down below. We have a free assessment for you, and that'll likely lead you to our Good Gut SIBO IBS program, which is chock full of information we wish we had. It's information that we're giving to our patients, so it's all at your fingertips in one package. It's 7+ hours of video. It is dozens and dozens of handouts. It's tailored meal plans and recipes to truly help you get to the root, to truly help you understand what's going on so you can truly heal with each meal. Check it out down below. And some of these meals, like really literally before we went live, we had lunch, and that meal for me was a quinoa. It had quinoa hummus. It had a chickpea frittata, and it had a bean patty on top of kale and tomatoes with tahini. Yeah, I said quinoa. And so all of that was a very good amount of protein. I had a good serving. It also had other veggies. It had squash. It had quite a variety. It was very delicious, and I enjoyed it. And and Dahlia had tofu tacos.
Yeah, tofu wraps.
High protein tofu wraps. So those are some of our favorite meals. A yogurt bowl is delicious.
Probiotics, yeah. I forgot to mention that. On top of everything, probiotics. So in my wraps, I had some sauerkraut. We'll usually add like a, dairy-free yogurt, sour cream to things. We'll add kimchi. We have kombucha every day. So we are always adding a type of probiotic. So yeah.
While we're on the subject, I want to answer some of these really quick. I love this because this is what we think. Plant-based diets, when meticulously planned, can provide all essential nutrients through fortified foods, legumes, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and diverse plant sources, but it gets much more expensive than buying meat. That can be a whole topic in and of itself. But I would argue no,
not
because
in my experience.
not in our experience. We've been doing this 13 years. And really, I mean, when you compare buying dried legumes
or even tofu
compared to not even a high quality animal product or meat product, like it is cheaper across the board. So
yeah, like I can get a 16-ounce pack of tofu from Trader Joe's, the high protein tofu with 14, let's see,
I think it has per serving like
60 grams of protein for $3, and it's organic. So
I challenge you to find 60 grams of this is high quality protein for $3 anywhere. I mean, a 60-gram cut of beef, even whether you're at Whole Foods
like 6 ounces.
Yeah, whether you're at Whole Foods or somewhere else, like you're not going to find that. So,
and like we said, we're not here to convince you to be vegan. So this isn't a battle we're going to engage in. We said the data supports predominantly plant-based diets, 80+% plants.
Yeah.
So it's really more of convincing people to eat more plants.
Another good question.
And someone's asking regarding plants, is there any evidence for eliminating nightshades for autoimmune disease? I love this question because we hear that, right? Like I said, the autoimmune paleo diet encourages people to avoid nightshades, which is why it says avoid grains, avoid beans, avoid nightshade vegetables like eggplant and tomato, and anything really that has those small seeds. So like strawberries are avoided. And so many of those vegetables with small seeds in them, green peas. And really, there's no data to support a lectin-free diet, but I think the overlap is histamines. So all of those nightshade vegetables with those small seeds and other foods can be high histamine. And, like we said, there's always a gut component when it comes to autoimmune conditions. There's always a gut and usually a nervous system component for a lot of people, but always a gut component. And usually there's that leaky gut component, that intestinal hyperpermeability component. And so that allows these certain cells that are part of the immune system called mast cells to pump more of one of the chemicals that they make, an immune chemical called histamine, just more directly to the inside of the gut. And so that can worsen some of those autoimmune symptoms, especially some of the GI symptoms, but also brain fog and fatigue. It can cause joint pain, skin breakouts, skin rashes, menstrual cramps. So it can overlap with a lot of these autoimmune symptoms. And so I think with nightshade free, It really, I think people find the benefits not because of the nightshades, but because they actually contain histamine. So I do see a lot of my autoimmune patients, especially with a very deep developed autoimmune state, improve from eating a low histamine diet. So there is data to support that. We do know a lot about histamines, eating low histamine, and just removing some of what's called those biogenic amines produced by the immune system to be helpful. So I love that question. Yeah.
We're
So
getting
not
some good
necessarily
questions.
nightshades, but histamines.
Yes. Great. Uh,
Someone saying, I just gave my sister 1 week's worth of plant based food to change her diet. It was $30 for the week.
yeah,
So
love it.
interesting.
And yeah, we're seeing. And look, overall, like Dahlia said, I mean, we're not here to convince you. I mean, we're here to just share what works, what the research is saying, what we do with our patients. I mean, you're going to be on your own journey. You're going to do your own research, hopefully. You can take our word for it or not. I
And
mean,
work with the dietitian.
and work with the dietitian. There's many, many avenues and components to this, but overall, it's important to understand if you are eating animal products, you are relying on the diet of that animal. I can't emphasize this
And the
enough.
cleanliness of that
And the
animal.
cleanliness of the animal. So to assume, because much of the USDA data is not necessarily out of date, it's just on a different time frame. It's not always up to date. Soil quality changes, food quality changes, the dietary patterns of what livestock is eating changes, and so that drastically affects the quality of the animal. And if we're talking about the average American is consuming animal products from fast food. Now, an independent research, this was a recent study that came out when they tested fast food, it was drastically less in terms of B vitamins and micronutrients, and it actually was way more contaminated than we thought with glyphosate. So in terms of pesticide residues, in terms of PFAS, if you've heard of PFAS in the news, it's because we're finding it more in foods, and especially lower quality foods that have been prepackaged and held in packaging for long periods of time, like fast food. Just, I know we're digressing. Oh, yeah, I digress. But anyway, but yeah, there's a lot there. We could do a whole talk on that.
Mhm.
If you want to hear more about just plant foods and animal foods, let us know down below. We can do a whole episode on that as it relates to gut health.
Yeah.
And we have done that in the past, but we could do it again. But
And I
yeah.
love this follow up question that this person's asking. My concern is if I'm getting most of the necessary minerals from meat, why should I spend more money on diversifying my diet with a lot of vegetables?
Mm.
That's where the additional cost comes in. Great question, especially on the topic, right? The gut thyroid connection. And there is strong data to show, right? There was that American Gut Project that
Mhm.
took place in 2019. They gathered what they called citizen science samples of stool from all around the world, and they had people record what they were eating. So they analyzed their stool and they measured that against their food journals. And so they saw those who were consuming 30 or more plants per week had the greatest diversity and richness of bacteria in their gut microbiome. And we do know as well, because someone's asking, which is related, regarding probiotics, how much is ideal to consume and how often. Those who were eating in another study from Stanford, the more fermented foods and probiotic foods that they were eating, about 4 to 6 servings or more a day, they had more rich diversity of healthy bugs, less inflammation. So they measured their inflammatory markers. They had lower levels of inflammation. And they saw they had strengthened immunity because they had less inflammation from that. So I would argue that's why you'd want to put in the additional cost to eating more plants, because we've shown a diversity of nutrients, a diversity of plants and antioxidants that you cannot get from animal products is what's going to be so important.
And I
And
want to
so yeah,
I
this
want to
person's
add to
saying,
that. Really, or go
I
ahead.
love their follow-up comment. It's funny
Okay.
how diversity is often the key to solving everything, whether it is in food or in our country. Yeah. It's all about
Diversity.
diversity and balance.
You got a Hispanic and an Egyptian talking to you with you. That wouldn't happen, maybe 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So it's really cool. Yeah, diversity is great.
Yeah.
And on that point though, connection too, where we're all connected and can come together on many levels. This works big macro in society, and it works in micronutrition, because what's crazy is we can all agree you're hearing a lot about probiotics, right? you're getting sold on probiotic supplements, and there's
Mm.
many people buying. I mean, probiotic supplements, when you go to like Whole Foods, are at least $30+
Some are
per
a lot.
bottle.
Some are like 100
Yeah,
plus
that's
dollars.
baseline, right? I mean, that's basic. And so, and yet, where can you get probiotics for free? By eating, right? Eating food. So either way you're going to spend on it. Why not get more bang? We're saying just get more bang for your buck by buying the fermented foods. I mean,
And they're not free, but
they're not free, but what I'm saying is you're going to want these probiotics either way, because these probiotics are the microbes that keep us healthy and
and you're
thriving.
usually getting both when you're getting them from, these probiotic foods, these fermented
And
foods,
plant foods.
and plant foods. You're getting not only the probiotic, but you're getting the food for the probiotic in the fiber called prebiotic. And, another analogy we like to give is it's like you're not only getting the seeds to plant, but you're getting soil along with those seeds. So you're getting the whole ecosystem. And then in return, because you're feeding them well and taking good care of them, they're giving you
Right.
fruits and flowers and vegetables and things to make you healthier, oxygen and all the things that you need to thrive. So that's really what your gut bugs want for you. But if you feel like your gut is off, there's so much help
Mhm.
out there, whether you are working with your care team, you know, work with your primary doctor. If you have a gastro, work with a dietitian who can help guide you. We know if you are struggling with autoimmune disease and IBS or gut issues, gut imbalance, we have our Good Gut SIBO IBS program that just came out. And so, that's an option. If you say, I know I have dysbiosis, I know I have gut imbalance, I'm trying to eat all the right foods, I'm eating the 30 plus plants, I'm eating the probiotics, and it is not going well. I do not
Yeah.
feel great. I feel like I'm not tolerating them well. That means something's off with your gut.
Yep.
It's not the foods, it's your gut. So address your gut, work on your gut, like we said, work on your nervous system. There's specific foods and certain nutrients that can be helpful for the thyroid, whether it's autoimmune or hyper or hypo. Start with those basics. So we've loved doing part 1 and part 2 of this gut thyroid connection. If
Yep.
there are any other topics you all want to hear about, let us know. We are going to continue coming at you with our Good Gut Lives. We try to do them several times a month. And if you want to learn more, you can go to our website, marriedhealth.com.
All right, guys. Well, as always, have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you very soon. And as always,
Heal with each meal,
all
but don't
right.
forget to feel with each meal too.
Don't forget that. All right. Until next time, everybody, have a wonderful
Bye.
day.